Debbie Lee, tell us about the family law. I'm particularly interested in the fact that you used the author of the book to write the script, even though he wasn't an experienced script writer. Can you tell us about that process?
I think for the family law, it was a memoir, and it has a really strong voice. So it was a different kind of situation, and it was all about trying to capture that voice. So we knew it was going to be quite a long process because Ben wasn't an experienced scriptwriter, but he'd done a university course, but he always describes it as doing script writing 101 because it took a number of years to do it. But it was really about that authenticity of voice. So even when other people were involved in the process and they may have done drafts, we always ensure that Ben did a voice pass on it. So that's why it was a particular situation.
And what did you keep from the book that you didn't keep in the mini-series? And what were the sort of key decisions you made in that process?
Well, the book, if for people who have read it, takes place over a number of years. So it's more, it's a little bit like a David Sedaris book where there's anecdotes and, little stories about his family and the life of his family and, that happened over a number of years. So the decision was, we couldn't do that in an adaptation. So it's like, well, how would it be approached? So it was Tony Ayres and Ben who really sat down and sort of figured out that initial pitch, like, what time frame should it happen over? And initially, when it was originally pitched, it was, it was a family over a summer where, divorce happens, the family breaks up. But each episode was going to be an event, be it Christmas, a birthday, some excursion to a theme park. So there was, and that was stuck to an extent, but during the development process, we strayed from that quite a lot.
At one stage you told me that Secret City, which none of us have seen yet, so you'll have to give us a description of what it is, it's a bit of a misnomer to say it's an adaptation. Why is that?
Well, the series is certainly based on the story, but the first book, The Marmalade Files, written by Chris Ullman and Steve Lewis, was kind of a thinly veiled satire on a certain period of Australian politics. So it was the Rudd-Gillard years, and so as an Australian reading that, you recognise some of those characters. But similarly, very different to the family law, but that was structurally it wasn't a linear narrative. Tommy was involved in a lot of the early development of that show, so you can attest to that. Like we had the fragments there, and we had the overall premise that we were interested in drawing from was Australia being at between these two superpowers, the US and China, and which way were we going to go. So that was like the underlying theme that everyone was drawn to, but it required a hell of a lot of invention, and at the same time that the development was happening, Steve and Chris were also writing the sequel, The Mandarin Code. So there was a lot of back and forth actually between the team and them. They were feeding information and reading drafts of things and reading the outline, going, "Oh, yeah, fantastic! It's completely different to the book, but that's great. What about this? Have you thought about this? Have you read this book? Do you want to talk to this person?" So Greg Waters, who was the script producer, spent a lot of time with Steve and Chris, and was interviewing people in Canberra, and so a lot of, I can't say how much, but there was a lot of back and forth. So the Mandarin Code is sort of closer to what the series is.